You are the salt of the earth. You are the light of the world. Metaphors, right? Metaphors. Of all the things in the Bible, for all the ancient cultural references that are lost to us in our culture, for all the rhetorical flourishes that were common in Hebrew or Greek and Roman society, but really aren't used at all today, despite all those parables in the Bible that trigger conversation but no real conclusions, it turns out to be metaphors that cause the greatest headache when teaching the Bible. Something we were taught in 5th grade. But it's so hard to wrap our minds around because our culture has sort of developed since the Enlightenment to label anything that's not literally factually true is labeled as a lie, which is a major problem in Christianity since our holy book came out of a culture that was built on the truth of myth and metaphor. In our Reading Between the Lines materials, the great scholar of myth, Joseph Campbell, writes of an encounter he had with a radio interviewer who insisted that the definition of the word myth had to be lie. That myths were simply lies, and that anything that was not factual was a lie. Campbell countered that the great myths of Scripture were not lies, they are metaphors. After some fruitless back and forth, Campbell realized that the radio host didn't actually know what a metaphor was. And so he challenged the man. I want you to give me an example of a metaphor. The host was utterly baffled and even went so far as to say, well, let's get in touch with some middle school teacher. Finally, with about a minute left in the show, the host rose to the occasion and said, I'll try. My friend John runs very fast. People say he runs like a deer. There's a metaphor for you. As the last seconds of the interview ticked off, Campbell replied, that's not a metaphor. That's a simile. The metaphor is John is a deer. The host shot back. No, that's a lie. John is not a deer. And Campbell said, no, that's a metaphor. And the show ended. Literalism messes everything up. To read metaphors literally, factually, is insane. America is a melting pot. Life is a roller coaster. Thank you, you're an angel. My teenager's stomach is a bottomless pit. The turnpike is a parking lot today. None of those are literally true. The turnpike has most assuredly not been set aside for parking purposes today. They are not factually accurate statements, but they are completely true. Life is a roller coaster. Teenagers eat as if they have a bottomless pit. And metaphors, it turns out, convey truth better than facts. Sticking with the turnpike, if the traffic report had said there are 4,218 cars on the turnpike between Fort Washington and Conshohocken, it would be true, but profoundly unhelpful. Give people a metaphor, though. Folks, it's a parking lot out there today. And folks will choose a different route. When I was young, I loved the Amelia Bedelia series of books. I mean, who am I kidding? I still love Amelia Bedelia. But do you remember Amelia Bedelia? For those who don't, the hook on the series was that Amelia took everything literally. Whether it was a figure of speech or a metaphor, she would then attempt to literally do these things. And so when asked to make a jelly roll for her caregivers, Amelia Bedelia would roll a chunk of jelly across the floor. When asked to strip the sheets from the bed, she took the bed sheets and tore them into strips. When asked to draw the living room drapes, she took out her sketchbook and would make a drawing of the curtains. Admittedly, those are figures of speech, not metaphors, but the point remains. The whole Amelia Bedelia series works because Amelia's literalism leads to hilarious misunderstandings of what she's supposed to be doing. For the most part, really, that doesn't happen with metaphors. We hear them, we understand what they mean, and we kind of move on with our life a little bit wiser. Our society is fine with that. Except somehow when it comes to Scripture. The Bible speaks to us in metaphor and in myth to convey the truth about God and our lives. It uses these metaphors to help us show things and teach things and describe things that are ultimately indescribable. And yet folks get really worked up, really angry, when reminded not to read biblical passages literally. To read them as metaphor or an extended series of metaphors which come together into a myth. That they are still very true, but they're not just a checklist of facts that have been offered to us. It's hard for a lot of people throughout all parts of Christianity to believe that our holy book is a series of metaphors, images, songs, prayers, stories, all designed to help us experience the truth of an inexplicable presence of the divine. Moses said, "The Lord is a rock." Isaiah said, "We are the clay, and the Lord is our potter." Jesus said, "I am the breath of life." Jesus said, "I am the light of the world." Jesus said, "I am the vine, and you are branches." Jesus said, "You are the salt of the earth." Jesus said, "You are the light of the world." They are all metaphors, and they are all true, but they are not facts. Science will teach us how, factually, light bends and reflects and refracts as it comes into the world from fission and fusion and LEDs and xenon and lightning bolts and everything else. Science will teach us about sodium chloride and how it's sometimes found as a mineral halite and how this rock salt is found in vast beds throughout the earth after lakes and seas evaporate. Those are the facts of light and salt in the earth. But we are the light of the world. In a time before electricity, which wasn't that far back, really, and even before kerosene and gaslight, daylight provided the only opportunity for work and activities and everything else that needed to be done. At night, moonlight would sometimes offer a soft glow, a chance for reflection. But any other light would have come from a small oil lamp, or perhaps a small fire, or a simple candle. You know, a candle can be seen from miles away, if it's dark enough. A candle gives direction to a sojourner. It's a nightlight which comforts a child. It's a flicker of hope to the despairing. A candle can start the kindling to light the fire to warm those around it. A candle doesn't have to be huge. It doesn't have to burn like the noonday sun. to do its work. We are the light of the world. We offer comfort and direction and hope. And we bring warmth and justice and protection and all the other things that make this metaphor true. And we are the salt of the earth, enhancing the flavor of life, preserving for future generations. A reminder that we and all people have worth. In Jesus' time, remember, salt often functioned as currency. But that's also where literalism ran amok, as centuries of Christians missed the point of that metaphor. Literalism took this metaphor of people being the salt of the earth. It's Black History Month. Let me just give you an example of how a literal reading of biblical metaphors has been used to oppress others. In the 19th century, as literalism was a new thing, gaining a foothold in Christianity, people noted that salt was a currency in Jesus' time. And Jesus said, "You are the salt of the earth," which meant that people are currency, which Christians then used to justify slavery, the buying and selling of human beings. Because Jesus said people are salt and salt is currency, so people are currency. When Jesus said, "You are the salt of the earth," it was a metaphor expressing the almost unbelievable, that their lives, our lives, have value, that we can preserve and protect and heal, that we can enhance the goodness of God's creation. It was not a justification for the buying and selling of human beings. It's funny when Amelia Bedelia takes things literally. People die when Christians take things literally. Our holy scriptures came out of cultures that were built on the belief that myths and metaphors conveyed essential truths to the world. Christians, the world is our stage. But soft, what light through yonder window breaks? It is the east, and Juliet is the sun. Amen.